Hello, and welcome back to the Sports Medicine Podcast. Tonight, recording with me is not Haley Karpic. She is recovering from an illness. Our technical lead and editing expert has graciously agreed to step in and sub for this episode. Brian, as you know, anytime someone new comes on the pod, we have to ask them what their walk up song is. So, which song are you going with?
I'd probably go with something to let everybody know I'm just kind of fun and but also just kind of not taking it too seriously. So I'd go with a Taylor Swift, probably Message in a Bottle. I feel like is a good hype up, but also just kind of fun. As you can probably guess, I'm pro Kel Swift, Traveler, whatever. Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce. Very, very fun couple to watch out for. I feel like that's a power couple if I've ever seen one. Other than us, I don't think you mentioned my main qualification, which is husband to you.
Yeah, and can we get a quick confirmation for the audience that I in no way, shape, or form coached that answer whatsoever? That I am just as surprised as the listeners right now?
You did not directly coach me to say that. I have just been well trained.
Fair enough. Okay, well, speaking of Travis Kelce, he plays in the NFL. This is a good transition. Today, I want to talk about kickers and punters in the NFL specifically. So, as we're rolling through the NFL season, I've now come across these interesting posts that have asked followers sort of two things, which is one, should game-winning field goals be eliminated from the NFL, given the current completion rates between the average field goal versus a touchdown? And then two, is punting or should punting also go extinct given the continuing increase of statistical evidence that teams are much more likely to secure a first down and not give the ball back to the other team as opposed to punting it away and then letting the other team march down the field? So before we start debating these questions, I want to provide you and all of our listeners some background information and some stats. Brian, does that sound good?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. According to Time Magazine, which was an article titled, "There's a Reason Football is Just Shaped Like That." In the early 1850s, when people were playing the earliest version of American football that we know today, the football was actually circular in shape and made of an inflated pig's bladder, hence the term pigskin. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you'll see our editor has flashed a photo of one of the original footballs up on the screen. It does look like a circular rugby ball.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Yeah.
That feels unwieldy.
It does. So, as I just kind of hinted at, the sport of football actually evolved from rugby, which evolved from kind of earlier primitive versions of soccer. And, all three of these have overlap that you can kind of pinpoint. So kicking these early pigskins included dropping the ball and then kicking it after a low bounce, according to the Harvard Magazine. Once the forward pass was invented, the football starts to modernize and take on the elliptical shape we recognize today, which made it easier to throw. However, these elliptical shaped footballs, as we know, have unpredictable bounces to them when they are kicked. So that kind of made it so that drop kicking and kicking off of a bounce went away, and then in comes the evolution of place kicking and punting that we watch today. So I found it interesting that in the 1950s, kickers were not specialists. Position players would step in to kick. For example, in 1953, legendary Lou the Toe Groza of the
What a
Cleveland
great nickname.
Browns.
What a great
I know,
nickname.
the toe.
The toe.
The toe of the Cleveland Browns was an offensive tackle. Groza converted 88.5% of his attempts that year, while the rest of the NFL missed more than half of their field goals.
I mean, why are you calling him the toe? He should be like the leg. The doesn't miss. Like, I don't know. There's got to be something better than the toe, but it is still pretty sick.
Yeah. And just think like of an offensive tackle today, just getting up for a field goal, just kicking it through the uprights. I mean, that is crazy.
Hey man, if you're good, you're good.
True. That is true. It's funny for me to think about, while on the
Yeah.
topic of Kelsey's, like Jason Kelsey,
That would,
offensive on the line, like he's a center, but
yeah.
he steps up in a time of need to kick a field goal. I mean, that would be incredible.
Jason Kelsey's what? Probably 6'3", 260.
Something like that.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
so like,
yeah, sure.
That would be you. I would be scared trying to block
after being like a center for several downs, like and expelling all that energy.
Oh, that's a good point too.
That's just crazy to me. Anyway,
go off.
Moving on from the toe. Well, actually, we're not moving on from the toe because I have one more fun fact that I found and I couldn't not tell the listeners and you about it. One of Lou Groza's kicking shoes actually resides in the Smithsonian. But actually, no NFL rule requires that kickers wear a shoe at all. And Rich Karlis, who kicked mostly for the Denver Broncos, was the last of the barefoot place kickers and ended his career with the Vikings and Lions, retiring in 1990, which isn't a long time until you and I were like born. Like it's a 6-year gap.
Right. That's crazy. Although I have to imagine it would be pretty hard. Like I'm glad that it wasn't illegal to kick barefoot because they're taking players' shoes and putting them in the Smithsonian. Like, no, in all seriousness, that's amazing. Go off. That probably hurts like hell. I don't know. Have you ever kicked a football? Like if you hit it the wrong way, that hurts.
Yeah, I've kicked a soccer ball without like shoes or socks on, and if you kick that the wrong way, it hurts a lot. So I'd imagine it'd be the same thing. But now there's a shoe in the Smithsonian that belonged to the toe. All right, so now we've gotten some history out of the way, which will bring me to the stats portion of this discussion. So as of last year for 2022, the highest field goal percentage was 94.3% for the Carolina Panthers, and the lowest was 73.7% for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this was according to NFL.com. Longest field goal attempt that was made in 2022 was 62 yards by Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker. And then every other kicker's longest made field goal of that year was also beyond 50 yards. This means all NFL teams could score by traveling a little over half the field when on offense, because you have to take into account like the kicker isn't on the line of scrimmage when he's kicking the ball, like kicking the field goal. He's back a bit, but still, point being, an offense only has to cover. And Brian, you're better at fractions, like just over half.
I think a field goal is line of scrimmage plus 17 yards.
Yeah.
10 for the end zone, 7 yards back to where they kick it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess that puts you at a 50-yard kick would be what, the 34-yard line?
Yeah.
33. Math is hard, man. 33-yard line.
It's nighttime. So I mean, it's an interesting concept to think about, though, because you really only need to travel, if you're saying, mid 30-yard line for a 50-yard field goal. I mean, that's only
you get 3 points basically, almost guaranteed. You get 3 points if you can make it 70 yards, including a touchback. So if you get a touchback 25-yard line, you get to go 50 yards. I mean, not even 40 yards.
So it is. It's closer than even like you're taking off a third of the field almost. And if you're not including the touchback, it's like what, like 25% of the field. So anyway, point being, it's just,
Yeah, that's a good
you
point.
don't have to travel 100 yards to score.
And
So
the good news is you only get 3 points for that.
right.
Touchdowns,
Right.
6 plus, well, and then extra points, a whole other discussion. But
Right. So then to add to this, the Washington Times reported in 2021 that 21 games were decided by 3 points or fewer that season, which at the time was tied for the third most ever through 5 weeks. So that was only data through the first 5 weeks. But at the time, it was tied for the third most ever of like game on the line, games being decided by 3 points or fewer.
yeah.
So now, Brian, with this information I've provided, as well as your own observational evidence through this NFL season, should game-winning field goals be eliminated from the NFL? And note, this is a completely hypothetical convo. No opinions are off the table. What do you think?
I think for me, it's pretty much a why mess with it? It's not, it's a high percentage a lot of times, but it's never a guarantee. So you're always having that situation, that skill element that I mean, somewhat random. The wind blows the wrong way, you get a gust, somebody slips, the field, the turf, you catch your foot in the turf, anything goes wrong, that's not a guarantee anymore. I think that little bit of randomness adds that little bit of excitement to it. And, say the other team's about to kick a game-winning field goal against your team, it's not over yet. There's always the chance that they miss it. And you charge the field the winner,
Mm-hmm.
As you and I both know, as Bears fans, you sometimes don't even make the right decision whether or not to kick. Lately, I feel like we have been making very bad decisions whether or not to kick. Last game, no, 2 games ago, it was just
Mm-hmm.
like we could kick a field goal to take the 3-point lead, or we keep trying to go down the field on a 4th and 2 and don't convert, and then give them a game-winning field goal, which we just decided that was better than a 80% field goal chance, which is just that's a part of the game too, is you're dealing with those pros and cons. So I think you got to leave it in, because it's adding variety to the game, and there's still randomness involved. Nothing's ever a guarantee in sport. If it was, we wouldn't play them.
Okay. I like 99.9% of that take. I'm not in the group that says eliminate them altogether. However, after reading the completion rates from last year, and the lowest being a 75, what is that, a C plus or something? Most teams make field goals. I think they should be eliminated in overtime.
Ooh, okay.
So I think that, and people, that's another common debate in the NFL of the coin flip, how overtime works in general, all that stuff. I think in overtime, especially in the playoffs, where it's one game is deciding if you're going to the Super Bowl or not, I think you got to score a touchdown to win the game.
Yeah. I like that.
That's my thought process on that.
My only worry is just like if both defenses are great, like how long?
Yeah, no, the game could go on a very long time.
Although NHL hockey games, they just keep playing until somebody scores a goal. So I guess it's kind of the same thing. It's like,
and think about
4
MLB,
or 5 overtimes. Yeah, those are sick. So
MLB
never mind. I like
going
that.
into 18
Touchdowns
innings
only.
or 17 innings. Like,
yeah.
I mean, now
those are the most exciting ones. So
yeah,
actually,
yeah.
I'm on board. You sold me on that.
Yeah. So that would be that. I think that's my take. 'Cause I agree with you. I don't think we should get rid of it.
Yeah, like it's completely. No fun to just be like, okay, the clock's below 2 minutes, so no one's allowed to kick a field goal. Like, you know.
No, and I think in regulation, to your point, if a team can play to their strengths and, you know, kick the field goal and trust their defense is going to make a stop, or, you know, they don't, and maybe they try to go for it and hold on to the ball and run the clock out, but maybe they give it to the other team and then the defense has to step up again. Like, I like that variety in regular time as well. But I do think, like, I don't know, it does feel a little cheap, maybe, that when you go into these overtime situations and both teams have just been playing amazing, and then, you know, a coin flip and a coin flip or a one stop or something, and the game goes over from a field goal that's made on average more than 75% of the time. It doesn't feel like a fun ending.
For anyone who's not familiar, I believe the NFL current overtime rules are: you do a coin flip, you get to the winner of the coin flip gets to decide if they get the ball, which they always do, because on your first possession, if you score a touchdown, you win. If you get a field goal, the other team gets a try, and if they score a touchdown, they win. Otherwise, if they score a field goal, then the first team gets the ball back again. But if the first team doesn't score a touchdown or a field goal, then the second team or the next team to score any points for any reason wins the game, whether that's a field goal or a touchdown or safety, whatever.
Right.
That's where we get into, it feels kind of cheap that it's been this great game and then it gets into overtime. First team gets the ball, can't score, has to punt it away. Then the other team just needs to kick a 60-yard field goal to win the game from the 43-yard line. And so they only need to make it a little bit of a way. Right. So that's definitely, I think, where this
as you're
comes from.
Saying it out loud, it literally, it's like a second coin flip. Right. Which is like what you don't like about it. Like, you just want the teams to play. And that's kind of why, like, there is another part of me that's like, if you're going to have a coin flip, why not just have another time? Like, and I'm not saying a whole nother quarter, but maybe like 9 minutes of play where you give the other team that chance to, you know, score a touchdown, get the ball back, score another touchdown, you know, or like, I don't know. There seems to be ways.
There has to be a better way than what they currently
than what it is currently.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. We can agree on that.
I'm curious what everybody else thinks. So feel free to send us an email or
put it in the YouTube comments. Those are always fun.
Curious what people think about NFL overtime, abolishing field goals in overtime, end of regulation. Interesting stuff.
Agreed. Now that we talked through that, let's get into punting. Personally, as someone who has played a little bit of soccer and secured a national third place in the Pepsi punt, pass, and kick in the 4th grade, Brian, don't applause. It's going to mess up the audio. Punting is one of the most enjoyable skills to learn in sports. There is nothing quite as satisfying as being able to punt an object through the air several feet. Any basketball players who are listening can relate to punting a basketball across a court to release frustrations from a subpar practice or game. And if we want to get super nostalgic with it, I remember punting kickballs from the outfield of the recess playground to the infield to try and get classmates out at home plate. because it's obviously a lot quicker to kick the ball there than to throw it there.
Right.
Brian, do you have any fun punting stories?
I mean, I was never really like a land sport athlete. I swam and played water polo growing up.
Have you ever punted a water polo ball? Is that what it's called?
A water polo ball. But
yeah.
I feel like we would try to kick the water polo balls, but that was like less out of frustration. Like if you're mad at a water polo ball, you just would yeet it as hard as you could with your arms because that was more efficient than trying to kick it. Sometimes we try to kick it into the goal just for fun, but that was more silliness. But I definitely have punted objects before in frustration. Like I feel like a few months ago, I punted your basketball because I was trying to get in shape and I wasn't hitting any of my shots. So I just punted it because I felt like crap. It felt better afterwards.
Yeah. See, okay. So it worked. Fun times. Before we jump into the history and stats, I wanted to bring some physics into the discussion. Feel free to fast forward 15 or 30 seconds if me nerding out does not interest you, the listener. But also that's kind of the entire podcast. According to a professor at the University of Minnesota in the College of Engineering, he made this excellent short little video on YouTube on punting. And using one of the like punters from Minnesota's college football team, he collected the following data. So an average college punter will punt a football from 0 to 50 miles per hour in 1/150th of a second. This means the football is experiencing over 400 Gs of acceleration, aka 400 times the acceleration due to gravity. This creates the parabola we witness from the punters during the game. To put this into further perspective, a modern day roller coaster can have a person experience about 4 Gs, which is 100 times less force than the football experiences when it's punted. I still strongly dislike physics and all of the math that went into creating those fun facts and stats, but that is incredible to think how much force is being applied to that object.
That's crazy because just like
multiple times throughout the game.
Yeah, I don't like roller coasters, and that's at most 4 Gs.
Yeah,
like thinking about experiencing 100 times that. Like obviously, a football is not a person, but like the fact that a person is making an object do that multiple times a game, that's crazy.
Yeah, and to amplify the craziness of that even more, I've read in a few sources it's kind of up in the air, right? Like depending on punter to punter and like person and stuff, but some sources suggest that the NFL punters actually are able to kick the ball closer to like 75 miles per hour, which would amplify the amount of G's experienced on the football even more so. So that's just crazy. Absolutely wild. Okay, but now jumping away from the physics, as a strategy for winning football games, punting in general just doesn't make a lot of sense. The punt is a holdover from football's rugby-related roots, as we mentioned above, and has been a part of the NFL for generations, according to this New York Times article that I'll make sure I link in the show notes. I forgot to take down the title. And in fact, according to this same article, during the 2021 playoffs, a specific game and a specific play is sort of the matchbox of what this article and this writer thinks is the tipping point and is going to make punting extinct. So I'll kind of remind everyone who was watching this, but in 2021, coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, Andy Reid, made the bold fourth quarter decision in Kansas City's divisional round playoff victory over the Cleveland Browns on Sunday. And he surprised the Browns defense with a fake punt and a short pass, which allowed the Chiefs to maintain possession, get a first down, and then most importantly, run out the clock without giving the Browns another chance to score. So the Chiefs would go on to win 22-17. And that, if people remember, was actually without Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if he was injured that game or kind of re-injured that game, but they actually had their backup QB in, and it was kind of a feel-good story that this guy came in literally, not even literally, was the most important game of this guy's career and did that. So, and then the article go on to say that this would inspire coaches in the future to go for it on fourth down instead of punting. And then, so there's some history, there's like some anecdotal evidence for you. And then some quick stats. Again, according to this same New York Times article, which I would highly recommend people read. It was very interesting. Teams punted an average of 3.7 times per game during the 2020 regular season, which is the lowest figure in recorded pro football history. Teams before that averaged 4.8 punts per game. And that rate held more or less steady since the mid 1980s. And then after 2017, it significantly declines, which is interesting. But really, it's not rocket science. The article kind of simplifies this, that when a team averages 4 to 6 yards per play, the national average in 2020 was 5.6 yards per play, that fourth downs with 1 to 2 yards from the line to gain are statistically probable to award the offense first downs, and more importantly, not give possession back to your opponent. So, Brian, I've given you all the info. You've watched a lot of football games. Do you think punting is going to go extinct, or do you think it should go extinct based on what you've seen and now heard today?
I don't know. I think I'm going to say no. I think there needs, I think, again, getting back to what I was saying about variety of the play earlier, if you're in your, next to your own end zone and it's fourth and long, you need something to get the ball out of there. You should, maybe the argument is you shouldn't be able, it's your fault for being there. The other team should get the ball there if you can't get out of that situation. But I would say, punting the ball, you're saying, I don't think I can do anything from the position I'm currently at. Let me just get this ball as far away from me as possible, make it harder for you on the next try, and then we'll come back bigger and better next time we get the ball. In fact, I would go so far as to say that I think we should punt more than we currently do. The XFL, I know, has started trialing this rule. I first heard about this in a video called "Kickoffs Are Stupid and Bad," which we can link to. But basically, it outlines there's something called the Schiano proposal, where Coach Greg Schiano, after one of his players had a spinal injury on a kickoff, where because basically the kickoff, the players run at each other full speed, and the guy catching the ball is protected by rules and stuff and fair catch and everything. But everybody else who's blocking for him head on into each other to block. And that happens before we decide if there's a fair catch or not. And so somebody got a spinal injury. And so Schiano is thinking, that's one of my guys. There has to be a better way. So he proposed doing a 4th and 15 or a 4th and 10. You get, instead of a kickoff, you get the ball 4th and 10 4th and 15, 4th and 20. like a pretty ridiculous fourth down.
Mhm,
Most teams
mhm.
would just punt it away. And a punt is safer because most people are lined up on the line, so they're running in the same direction during the play.
Right,
Whereas a
right.
kickoff, they're running full speed at each other. I just think that makes more like the same thing. Punt returns are always exciting. There's been more scores. The XFL's trying it out. I don't know. It's interesting because then you still have the opportunity, instead of it like an onside kick is anywhere. We're getting into a different brand of kicking, but I think we should punt more. I think punting is safer than kickoffs, but also I'm not the one who plays the sport, so it's
No,
not my call.
I didn't know that information about sort of the safety discussion behind that argument, behind the kickoff argument. That's interesting.
I think
I just
it's
thought
better.
people wanted to get rid of it because like you said earlier, like the majority of the time it's a touchback. But you're
Yeah,
right that you're coached to not play like it's a touchback. You're
right,
coached to
right.
sprint down there and
I always find it fascinating.
make a
The
tackle.
players, I think, like the players always run into the end, like the kicking team. I feel like they're the people going to try to tackle the kicker or
They
the
slow down
receiver.
in the end zone.
They always run all the way to the end zone, and I think that's because they're probably coached. If you don't sprint to the end zone, you're running laps all week. If you don't
Right.
get your butt down to the end zone
Well, and then
every
I
single
just think
kickoff.
they need that space to like slow down too. It's not like you can go from a sprint to
Right? Yeah,
just stopping. Like,
you just run into the
so
wall
yeah,
of
I
the
think they're
stadium.
using that to like slow down too. Yeah, that is interesting. So I agree with you for different reasons. I don't think punting should go extinct. I don't even think it will. And my evidence to suggest that there's still definitely a strategic gain from punting is when you have seasons like we do now, where there's all these rookie quarterbacks that are learning the speed of the NFL and learning, how to operate in the NFL. When teams have been able to, and I'll speak, unfortunately, woe is me. I started Jordan Love on my fantasy team yesterday, and that went
Yeah.
poorly. But it's a great example of young dude hasn't seen a lot of professional snaps, and the Raiders would punt the ball, and they had a pretty decent punter. I don't know what his name was, but I think like one time or maybe twice, both teams were able to like punt it so that the ball was in like the 7 yard line or the 20 yard line or whatever. And they're not giving this rookie a lot of space to operate. And, you know, he threw, I think, 2 interceptions last night. I think he ended with like 2 points in fantasy or four, something like that. So, especially with younger players, I think it puts pressure on them to perform. And then on the flip side of that, the other extreme is if like if your offense is struggling and you're playing someone insanely good like Patrick Mahomes, I'm not saying it's ever a good time to give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes, and I think he can pretty much score at will whenever, but your odds, I think, of stopping him are a lot better the closer he is to your end zone than the closer he is to midfield, right? Or the or his end zone, the end zone he's
Yeah.
protecting, you know?
Yeah.
Right? Like that logically makes sense. Like I'd way
That makes
rather
sense.
face
Like if
Patrick
he's
Mahomes
yeah, if he's in the back of his
before
mind
he hits
thinking,
midfield.
yeah, if he's in the back of mind thinking like, I mean, Patrick Mahomes probably isn't, but other quarterbacks would probably be like thinking in their mind, like, you know, I'm I need to do something with this. Like I'm stuck towards my own end zone. My team's counting on me to get the ball out of here.
Mhm.
They're going to feel that pressure and maybe make a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was kind of my take. And I think again our discussion veered off a bit because I think this article specifically that I sourced my stats, my information from, was more arguing about these kind of newer situations where you have 4th and 1, 4th and 2, you're at the 50-yard line. What do you do? And
That's
again, I think it kind of depends on who you're playing against. Like if you're playing against a rookie quarterback and your defense is pretty good, like that could get you more yards than
and
your 1 yard QB sneak. Like it's
yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. Is if it also depends not just who you're playing against, but who are you? Because if
right.
you're the Eagles, the best at offensive line,
4th and 1, 4th and 2. Yeah.
the QB sneak, the tush push, the brotherly shove, whatever you want to call it. They're the best in the league at it. Nobody knows how to stop it. Like, yeah, you do that every time. It's gonna keep working.
I think that's a
Um,
good thing to end on because I think next year at this time we'll be debating if that specific play should
yeah,
be abolished from the NFL or
right,
not. That's the new thing
right,
I think people are starting
right.
to
Yeah, no,
get up in arms about.
to get back to the 4th and 1, 4th and 2 punt, that is pretty sad. It's no fun to watch your team do it. It's no fun to watch the other team do it because you're like, just try it, and then maybe we'll get like good field. Like, it's just not fun to watch that. Like, but 4th and 5, 4th and 10, fourth and more. Like, I'm just like, yeah, just punt it away. You're not doing anything with it anyway, probably.
Well, you know what else we can punt away?
This episode,
You
not
got
like,
it.
yeah. Oh, okay.
You
It's
got
like,
it. And I mean in the sense that it's fun,
right.
We're
Yeah.
having a good time. I don't mean we're gonna like trash
Throw it in
it or
the
anything
bin.
like that. Yeah. No. All right, that's it. Another fun episode in the books. Quickly, do not forget to follow us on socials. They'll all be linked in the description below. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it with friends and family first. Then go ahead and like and subscribe and comment on the podcast wherever you listen. Thank you to everyone who's commented already. As soon as Haley's back, we'll do some shout outs. We're finally live on Google's podcast platform as well, so you can listen to us almost anywhere now, quite literally. Thank you so much for all the support so far. We are having so much fun putting this together every week. I'm Maddie Portland.
I'm Brian Portland.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Medicine Podcast. Cheers.